My husband and I had just finished shopping for our son's 21st birthday at Northgate Mall. I went ahead to grab the car while he stepped aside to take a call from the hospital. I didn't think twice about it. That was his life, always on call. I was almost at the vehicle when an older parking attendant approached me. "Is that your husband?" she asked quietly. I nodded. She glanced back at him, then pulled out her phone. "Ma'am, you might want to see this." 30 seconds later, what she showed me made my stomach drop. Welcome to Family Revenge Stories. I'm truly grateful you're here. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And when you reach the end, rate this story from 1 to 10. Your feedback helps me craft even stronger, more powerful stories for you. Also, a brief note. This narrative includes fictional elements woven in for storytelling and reflection. Any resemblance to real names or places is purely coincidental, but the lessons about family, trust, and consequences are very real. Saturday afternoons in September usually meant gardening or Seahawks pregame prep, but this Saturday, September 7th, 2024, David had convinced me to spend the afternoon at Northgate Mall looking for Evan's 21st birthday gift. He's not a kid anymore, he'd said that morning over coffee. Let's get him something grown up. We'd spent 3 hours wandering through department stores, finally settling on a Tag Heuer watch that made my wallet weep. But Evan was graduating with his engineering degree next spring, and David insisted he deserved something that would last. We were heading back to the car, shopping bag swinging, when his phone rang. "Seattle Grace," he said, glancing at the screen. His expression shifted instantly from relaxed to alert. "This is David Thornton." I watched his face change as he listened. His free hand came up to rub his temple, the way it always did when stressed. "How high is the fever?" "CT results? Right. Give me 20 minutes. He ended the call with an apologetic smile. "Emergency in the ICU. Doctor, Prescott's out and sick and they need authorization for a transfer." "I'm so sorry, babe." "It's fine," I said, swallowing disappointment. "That's the job. I need to call Dr. Vaughn to coordinate. He was already pulling up contacts. Can you grab the car?" "I'll meet you at the entrance. You know how she is with details. This might take a few minutes. Dr. Vaughn." The name didn't register then. It would later. I took the bags and headed across the parking garage while he stepped aside, phone already at his ear. Our silver Lexus was parked on level 3, west corner, same general area. I always chose a habit from my military days when finding your vehicle quickly mattered. The concrete structure was packed with Saturday shoppers, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across rows of SUVs. I was 30 feet from the car when the parking attendant approached. She was older, late 50s maybe, with gray-streaked dark hair and a weathered face. Her uniform hung loose on a wiry frame, but her eyes caught me. Sharp, careful, like a woman about to deliver bad news and hating it. "Excuse me, ma'am." I stopped, keys halfway out. "Yeah?" She glanced past me toward where David stood with his back to us, still on his phone. When she looked back, something in her expression made my stomach tighten. "Is that your husband?" she asked quietly. The man in the blue jacket. I followed her gesture. David was 50 feet away, animated on his call, gesturing the way he always did when explaining something complex. Even from here, I could hear his laugh, bright and genuine. That laugh, the one I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "Yeah, that's David." My voice came out cautious. "Why?" Her jaw tightened. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, then seemed to steel herself. "My name's Victoria. I work here Tuesday through Saturday." She paused. 2 weeks ago, I saw something. I've been debating whether to tell you about it." Another pause. "Because what I saw, you need to know." Cold dread washed over me. "What are you talking about?" She turned her phone toward me. The video was grainy security camera footage from a high angle, but the timestamp was crystal clear. August 24th, 2024, 3:47 p.m. This same garage, this same level. There was David with a woman in surgical scrubs. She stood too close, hand resting on his hip with casual familiarity. He laughed that same laugh, and then she leaned in. The kiss wasn't quick or uncertain. It was practiced, comfortable, the kind that came from repetition. 30 seconds of video. 25 years of marriage. Shattered. I watched it twice, forcing myself to catalog details through the shock. The woman was younger, mid, 40s maybe, fit, confident, and David's body language was relaxed. Leaning into her, this wasn't their first time. This wasn't a mistake, what I debated showing you, Victoria said quietly, giving me space. But if it were my husband, I'd want to know. I'd want the truth before I wasted more years on a lie. My throat felt like broken glass. Who is she? Don't know her name. But she's been here 4 times in the last month. Always around 3:30. Always in those dark blue surgical scrubs. Always with him. She paused. After the first time, something felt off. So I started keeping records. Records. Security footage. Evidence. The word cut through my shock. This wasn't just some random person feeling sorry for a stranger. Victoria had been watching, documenting. Why? My name is Thornton, I said automatically. Carly Thornton. Something flickered across her face, recognition maybe, but it vanished before I could read it. Miss Thornton, I'm sorry I had to be the one to show you this. Her voice carried genuine regret. But better to know now than keep living in the dark, right? I nodded, not trusting my voice. In the distance, David laughed again, still oblivious. He looked happy, carefree, like a man who'd successfully balanced his Saturday with his wife, and his Saturday with his. What? His colleague? His lover? My mind raced through memories, rewriting them. Every late hospital shift, every weekend on call, every time he'd come home exhausted, smelling like antiseptic. How many had been real? How many had been her? But even through the rage and betrayal churning in my gut, 12 years of military intelligence training kicked in. I'd spent a career as an analyst, learning to process information without emotion, to wait for the complete picture before acting, to understand that premature moves lost wars. Don't react. Gather intelligence. Confirm everything. Then strike with precision. Thank you, I told Victoria, my voice steady, controlled. I appreciate you telling me. She studied me for a long moment. You're not going to confront him right now. Not yet. I glanced at David, wrapping up his call. Not here. Something like, respect, crossed her features. If you need anything more evidence, testimony, whatever, you know where to find me. Tuesday through Saturday, 2 to 10, I filed that away and forced myself toward the car. By the time David reached me, I had my expression locked down, neutral. Just tired from shopping. Crisis averted, he said brightly, sliding into the passenger seat. You know how Dr. Vaughn is always panicking over nothing. He set his phone in the cup holder and smiled that smile I'd fallen for 26 years ago. Thanks for grabbing the car, babe. My feet are killing me. Dr. Vaughn. The name landed like a physical blow. The woman in the scrubs. The woman he'd been kissing 2 weeks ago. The woman he'd just spent 10 minutes coordinating with. No problem, I said, starting the engine. He talked the whole drive home. Hospital politics. Evan's birthday plans. A new restaurant we should try. I made appropriate sounds, nodded at the right moments, even smiled when he touched my arm. But inside, everything had changed. The woman who would have confronted him in that garage, who would have let emotion drive her choices, demanded answers, made a scene. That woman died somewhere between Victoria's video and the driver's seat. The one behind the wheel now was different. Someone who understood that showing your cards too early meant losing everything. Someone who knew real victory required patience, planning, and cold calculation. Dr. Vaughn. I filed the name with everything else. The timestamps, the scrubs, Victoria's careful documentation, the way David said her name familiar, casual, like someone he spoke with daily. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. My voice stayed calm, answering his questions. My face showed nothing but a tired wife after a long day of shopping. But behind that mask, a different woman was taking notes, calculating, planning. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The house was dark when we pulled into the driveway. Bellevue's suburbs had that September quiet lawn sprinklers on timers, porch lights glowing yellow, the distant hum of I-405 fading to white noise. Normal, peaceful, a different lifetime. David hummed while brushing his teeth, some off-key pop song. I watched through the bathroom mirror as he caught my eye and smiled. Genuine, warm, nothing to hide. "A long day," he said, rinsing his toothbrush. "But Evan's going to love that watch." "Yeah, he will." He kissed my cheek and pulled back the covers on his side. Our bed, the one we'd picked out 15 years ago, the one where we'd whispered about our son's grades and college applications and whether he was ready for the world. How much of that had been real? I went through my routine on autopilot. Teeth, contacts out, phone on the nightstand. David was already under the covers, scrolling through something on his phone. Blue light illuminated his focused expression. Then he placed it under his pillow. Not on the nightstand, not beside him. Under the pillow. I'd watched him do this for months without questioning it. "My alarm's too loud on the nightstand," he'd explained once. "This way, the vibration wakes me without disturbing you." Considerate, thoughtful, reasonable. Now I knew better. I climbed in, turned off my lamp, stared at the ceiling. The house settled with familiar creaks. The furnace kicked on. A dog barked twice down the street. David's breathing evened out within minutes. He'd always been a quick sleeper, planes, waiting rooms, the couch during Seahawks games. I used to envy that. Tonight, I watched the digital clock. 11, 47, 12, 13. Edern Arshabafen. At 2:04 a.m., his phone buzzed under the pillow. Soft, muffled, but I was so wired I heard it clearly. David shifted, reached under the pillow, fingers brushing the phone. Then he smiled, still asleep, a small, unconscious curve of his lips. Who makes you smile like that, even in your dreams? Dr. Vaughn. Dark blue scrubs, confident hands that practiced kiss. I forced myself to breathe. 4 counts in, 4 hold, 4 out. Box breathing from my army days. Staying calm under fire. Because this was fire. My mind cycled through the past 8 months. Victoria had said 4 times in the last month, which meant this had been going on longer. 8 months of signs I'd missed. The gym bag in his trunk that never needed fresh clothes. The new cologne he'd started wearing in June. Woody, expensive, not his usual scent. His phone always face down now. Passcode locked, notifications hidden. "Work's been stressful," he'd said when I'd asked. "Hospital politics, budget cuts." I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? 25 years. A son, a mortgage, joint accounts, retirement dreams. You don't question solid ground until you're falling through it. The rage came in waves. I wanted to shake him awake, demand answers, throw that phone across the room, make him look at me while I asked who Dr. Vaughn was and how long he'd been lying. But under the rage ran something colder. 12 years, as a military intelligence analyst, had taught me that emotion kills strategy. Acting on impulse gets people hurt. The person who gathers information and strikes at the right moment wins, not the person who strikes first. If I confronted him now, what did I have? One security video, a suspicious phone habit, gut feeling, he'd deny it, explain it away, maybe accuse me of paranoia, of not trusting him, and I'd have shown my hand before knowing the full game. No. Better to investigate, document, build evidence that would hold up when I needed it. I needed a private investigator, someone who could follow him, confirm Victoria's video, find more. Bank records, phone records, patterns. Because if this was real, and I knew it was, I needed to protect myself, protect Evan, protect everything I'd built. At 3:47 a.m., his phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't smile, but he reached for it, still asleep, pulling it closer like a child with a teddy bear. I closed my eyes and counted breaths. Morning crawled forward. 4:15, 5:2, 6:33. When David's alarm went off at 7, I'd been awake 8 hours straight. He stretched, yawned, rolled over, smiling. "Morning, babe. Sleep okay?" Like a rock. Downstairs, I went through motions. Started the coffee maker he'd insisted we needed 2 Christmases ago. Pulled out eggs, butter, bread. Set the table while he showered. When he came down, hair damp, smelling like his sandalwood shampoo, he was already talking. Evan texted last night. He's thinking about coming home next weekend. We should take him to that steakhouse he loves. He poured coffee, added cream. Oh, and I've been looking at kitchen remodels. Those granite countertops we talked about? I think we should finally do them. He sat at the island, scrolling through Pinterest while I scrambled eggs. I nodded, made sounds, asked about countertop colors. Normal, automatic. A performance I could deliver in my sleep. Because behind the breakfast routine and the coffee and the conversation about kitchen renovations, I was calculating. Victoria's offer. If you need anything evidence, testimony, you know where to find me. First move, find a private investigator, get documentation, build the case. Second move, protect assets, talk to a lawyer, understand my options. Third move, wait, watch. Let him think everything was fine while I gathered ammunition. David laughed at something on his phone. Look at this backsplash. Too modern? A little bit, I said, plating eggs. What about the subway tile? He smiled. You always know what I'm thinking. No, David, I never did. I set breakfast in front of him, poured orange juice, sat across from him at the table we'd refinished together 5 years ago. He talked about Evan's visit, about calling him later to confirm plans, about whether we should repaint the guest room before he came home. And I listened, responded, played my part. Because this was war now. Maybe it had been war for 8 months while I'd slept through the invasion, but I was awake now. And in war, the side that strikes smarter always wins. Sunday morning, sunlight filtered through the windows, catching dust in the air. The house was quiet, except for the refrigerator's hum and a distant lawnmower. Once, those sounds meant peace. Now, they meant privacy. I opened my laptop and typed, Private Investigator, Seattle. 247 results. I narrowed it down. Divorce investigations, Seattle, surveillance expert. 30 minutes later, I found Brenda Merrick. Her website was clean and direct. 15 years experience, former Seattle PD, domestic cases. Discretion guaranteed. No flashy promises, just competence. Her office was in Sodu, inside a converted warehouse, not the cliché trenchcoat setup. Better. I called Merrick Investigations. My name is Carly Thornton. I need to hire someone today. A pause. What's the situation? My husband is having an affair. I need to know everything. 2. Address is on the site. Come alone. She hung up. Brenda's office was on the 3rd floor, past a yoga studio and a design firm. The door was unmarked. Inside, the space was spare. Desk, cabinets, coffee maker. No family photos, no clutter. Brenda looked about 40, lean, controlled. Her eyes assessed me quickly. Former cop, without question. Miss Thornton, she said, gesturing to a chair. Tell me what you know. I gave her the outline. The parking garage footage Victoria had shown me. 8 months of warning signs. The phone hidden under his pillow. 2 a.m. Messages. She asked sharp questions. His workplace, schedule, joint accounts, children. When I finished, she leaned back. You're calm. Most people aren't. I was military intelligence, I said. Emotion clouds judgment. Something shifted in her expression. What exactly do you want? Everything. Who she is. How long. Where they meet. Financial movement, his and hers. Communications, if possible. I need something that stands up in court. She nodded. $150 an hour, plus expenses. 2 weeks for a full profile. I'll pay double if you do it in one. She paused. $300 plus expenses. Knowledge is leverage. Right now, he has it. She studied me, then amended the contract. 1 week. No guarantees on depth if he's cautious. Prioritize identity and financials. Fair. She stood and offered her hand. Updates via encrypted email. Password changes daily. Don't access from a shared device. Understood. At the door, she added, whatever you're feeling, don't show it. If he senses suspicion, he cleans up. I've already started. Tuesday evening brought steady Seattle rain. David was on the couch watching a hospital drama. I was in my office, door cracked open, waiting. At 7:47 p.m., the encrypted email arrived. A separate text delivered the password. I entered it carefully. The report opened. Brenda had identified her. Dr. Patricia Vaughn, 45, cardiac surgeon at Seattle Grace Hospital, lives in a downtown condo on Westlake Avenue. Then the activity log. Monday, yesterday. They met at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, room 847, registered under her name. He entered at 2:15 p.m., exited at 4:47 p.m., 2 hours and 32 minutes. I read it 3 times. 2 hours and 32 minutes while I reviewed blueprints at a job site, while I texted him asking what he wanted for dinner, while I believed we were building a future. Tuesday, today. They met again. Northgate parking garage, level 3. Physical contact observed. 8 minutes. The same garage where Victoria had first shown me footage. They were comfortable, repeating patterns. The financial summary noted irregular transfers in our joint account. Brenda was still investigating, but preliminary review suggested funds were moving. I leaned back. Dr. Patricia Vaughn, a real woman with a title and an address. A person who had been touching my husband, booking hotel rooms, messaging him at 2 inches the morning. My chest tightened. 25 years reduced to timestamps and receipts. But beneath the pain was something colder. Information, evidence, exactly what I'd paid for. "Babe," David called from the living room. "You coming?" I closed the laptop, locked it. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4. Box breathing. Then I walked out and kissed the top of his head. Sorry. Work email. What are we watching? Grey's Anatomy. The one where the surgeon's marriage falls apart. The irony nearly made me laugh. I poured 2 glasses of Pinot Noir, the one he'd insisted we splurge on last month. Sat beside him on the couch we'd picked out together during the remodel. On screen, actors portrayed dramatic betrayal. Beside me, David leaned into my shoulder, as he had for decades. Familiar. Automatic. He had no idea I'd just read a report detailing his Monday afternoon in a hotel room with another woman. I sipped wine and considered what I was becoming. A woman who could sit calmly beside her husband while mentally cataloging evidence. A woman who understood that confrontation now would only drive him to a lawyer, drain accounts, erase proof. A woman who knew justice required patience. On television, the fictional husband discovered the affair and threw his wife out immediately. Emotional, satisfying, reckless. I took another sip. That's not how you win. Wednesday evening, I went back to the parking garage. I'd thought about it all day through a morning site inspection where I'd barely registered the contractor's questions, through lunch I didn't taste, through an afternoon of reviewing blueprints without seeing them. Victoria's careful attention, the way she'd looked at me when I'd said my name, the deliberate documentation. You don't keep records like that unless you have a reason. I found her on the 3rd level during her shift, guiding an SUV into a tight spot. When the driver left, she turned and saw me. No surprise crossed her face, like she'd been expecting this. Before I reveal what she told me in that bar, I need to ask you something. Type yes in the comments if you want to know the truth about Victoria. Type no if you think some secrets should stay buried. I need to see you're still here. Quick reminder, this story includes some dramatized details for storytelling purposes. If that's not for you, no hard feelings if you exit now. But if you're staying, buckle up. We need to talk, I said. Not here, somewhere private. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. There's a bar 3 blocks east, Murphy's. I'm off in 20 minutes. Murphy's was the kind of dive that had probably looked the same since the 70s. Dim lighting, scarred wooden bar, Rainier beer signs, and the smell of decades of cigarette smoke baked into everything despite the smoking ban. A handful of regulars hunched over drinks, minding their own business. We took a booth in the back. Both ordered beer. Neither of us touched it. I hired a private investigator, I said without preamble. She confirmed everything you showed me. The affair, the timeline, everything. I leaned forward. But what I don't understand is why you told me in the first place. You don't know me. You could have just let it happen, stayed out of it. Victoria was quiet for a long time. Her hands rested on the table, weathered and scarred working hands. Her jaw worked like she was chewing words, trying to figure out which ones to spit out. I could have, she finally said. Part of me wanted to. Part of me thought maybe you deserved it. The perfect life falling apart. Why would I deserve it? Because you got everything I didn't. She met my eyes. But then I watched you. Really watched you. And I realized you didn't know. About any of it. The affair. The other thing. What other thing? Victoria reached into her jacket and pulled out a photograph. Old, creased at the edges, colors faded. She set it on the table between us. A young white woman, maybe early 20s, holding a baby. Beside her stood an Asian man in his 30s, suit and tie, hand resting on her shoulder but not quite touching the child. I looked at the woman's face. The eyes, my mother's eyes. The floor dropped out from under me. Her name was Catherine Thornton, Victoria said quietly. 58 years ago, she had an affair with my father while on business in Sacramento. He was a translator at a conference. She was married. Had a 2-year-old daughter back in Seattle. Me. She'd had me. She left before I was born. Never came back. Never sent money. Nothing. Victoria's voice was flat. Decades of pain compressed into monotone. My father raised me alone. Worked 3 jobs. Never told me her name until I was 15. When I finally tracked her down and showed up at her office, you know what she said? I couldn't speak. She said, I have a family. I have a daughter. You're a mistake. Don't come back here. If you tell her, I'll destroy you and your father. Victoria's hands clenched. So I didn't. For 43 years, I kept that secret. My mind raced. My mother, the woman who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd come to every softball game, who'd worked overtime to pay for college, had done this. Had another daughter she'd threatened into silence. How did you find me? I managed. Victoria pulled out another document. A DNA lab report. My name at the top, hers at the bottom. Probability of half-sibling relationship, 99.97%. 3 years ago, I took a DNA sample from a coffee cup you left at a construction site. I was a licensed private investigator back then, mostly retired now, but I still had connections. Once I confirmed it, she trailed off. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront you. Part of me wanted to see if your perfect life was really perfect. Part of me just wanted to protect you from getting hurt the way I did. So you took a job at the parking garage 6 months ago. After I'd watched you for a while, learned your routine, your husband's routine, her expression darkened. 4 months ago, I saw him with Patricia. I recognized the signs, the looking over shoulders, the quick touches, the practiced way they moved together. I've done enough domestic surveillance to know what cheating looks like. And you kept watching. I kept records, photos, timestamps, because I thought if it came to it, you'd need evidence. The kind that holds up. She paused. And because I knew what it felt like to be lied to about family, I couldn't let him do that to you without you knowing. My sister. This stranger was my sister, Brenda Merrick, I said slowly. The PI I hired. Is she my daughter? Victoria's mouth twisted. When you called looking for an investigator, I told her to take your case, to do it right, to help you the way I couldn't help myself all those years ago. We sat in silence, 2 women who shared DNA and nothing else, connected by a mother who'd failed us both in different ways. I'm sorry, Victoria finally said, for all of it, for how you found out, don't. I cut her off. You gave me the truth. That's more than she ever did for either of us. Something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe, or the beginning of understanding that we were on the same side. She cleared her throat. There's something else. Brenda found it in her preliminary investigation. What? His money. Your husband and Patricia. They're not just having an affair, they're moving money. Significant amounts, from your joint accounts into something else. My blood went cold. How much? Brenda's still tracking it. But based on what she's seen so far, Victoria met my eyes. Enough that this isn't just about betrayal anymore. It's fraud. And just like that, everything changed again. This wasn't just my husband cheating. It was something much, much worse. Thursday evening, Victoria asked me to come to her apartment. "There's something you need to see," she said on the phone, voice measured, not urgent, controlled. The kind of tone that meant bad news was coming, but it would be delivered carefully. I'd already had enough bad news for one lifetime. Her place was in Capitol Hill, an old brick building squeezed between coffee shops and vintage stores. Third floor, no elevator. The hallway smelled of garlic and damp carpet. Victoria opened the door before I knocked. "Come in." I stepped inside and froze. The wall opposite the entrance was covered, floor to ceiling. Photographs, dozens, maybe hundreds. Surveillance shots, some grainy, some crisp. David's face appeared over and over, entering hotels, sitting in cafes, laughing, touching a woman's arm, getting into cars I didn't recognize. Between the photos were printed bank statements, business registrations, and timeline charts connected with red string. In the center was an 8x10 photo of Dr. Patricia Vaughn in surgical scrubs, smiling easily at the camera. "Jesus," I whispered. Victoria closed the door. "I know how it looks, but this is how investigations work. You map it until the whole pattern shows." I moved closer, drawn to the upper left corner of the wall. February 14th, Valentine's Day. David entering the Fairmont Olympic Hotel at 2:17 p.m. Another photo of him leaving at 5:43 p.m. 3.5 hours. I had been in Redmond that afternoon, site inspection. I texted him around 6 asking about dinner. He'd said he was exhausted and wanted takeout. He'd been with her. 8 months, Victoria said quietly. I've documented 6, but Brenda traced it back further. Valentine's Day is the first confirmed hotel visit. 8 months of lies. 8 months of goodnight kisses that tasted like betrayal. My eyes followed the timeline. March 7th, parking garage. March 23rd, downtown restaurant. April 9th, another hotel. May 2nd, his car outside her condo for 4 hours during a board meeting. The pattern repeated with precision. Then I noticed the business documents pinned near the center. "What's Summit Healthcare Partners, LLC?" I asked. Victoria stepped beside me. Registered March 20th. Co-signed by David Thornton and Patricia Vaughn. My stomach tightened. "On paper, it's a medical equipment supplier," she said. "They do sell some equipment, legitimate enough to pass inspection. But the pricing is inflated. A handful of small clinics are involved." She handed me bank statements. Transfers $5,000, $12,000, $8,000, $15,000, over and over, from an account number I recognized. Our joint savings. "How much?" I asked. $180,000. Over 6 months. Small increments to avoid detection. Together, it adds up. $180,000. Gone. "There's more," Victoria said. She showed me news articles and court records. "Patricia has done this 3 times before. Portland, 2019. San Francisco, 2021. Denver, 2022. Same model." She pointed at a chart. "She targets hospital administrators, married men between 45 and 50. Men with assets, inheritances, joint accounts. She seduces them, convinces them to form a business partnership, creates a clean-looking LLC, slowly drains funds, then relocates before anyone pieces it together. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? Because they're ashamed. To expose her, they'd have to admit the affair. Risk careers, risk marriages. She keeps each case under major felony thresholds when possible, and she makes every man feel chosen. I stared at the list of cities. Portland, San Francisco, Denver, Seattle. A pattern. Who were they? I asked. I don't have all the names, but this one. She handed me a card. Dr. Arthur Kingsley, San Francisco. He was victim number 2. He's also her ex-husband. She married one, early on, before she refined the process. He lost his job when the affair surfaced. She drained a $400,000 inheritance before disappearing. Victoria met my eyes. He's been waiting for someone to stop her. When I explained your situation, he agreed to talk. He's flying in tonight. When? Tomorrow, if you want. I turned back to the wall. A recent photo caught my attention. David in a cafe last week, laughing. Patricia, leaning forward, intent on his face. He looked alive, happy. He had no idea. He doesn't know, does he? I asked. Almost certainly not, Victoria replied. That's her skill. She makes every man believe he's the exception, that what they have is rare. I thought about David defending her at dinner, about the way he said her name, about how convinced he must be that this was love. He was a victim, like Arthur Kingsley, like the others. But that didn't erase what he'd done to our marriage, or the money, or the deception. I turned to Victoria, my sister, a woman I'd known for less than a week but who now stood at the center of this unraveling. Set up the meeting with Arthur Kingsley, I said. Tomorrow. She nodded. I want to know everything. Friday morning, I called my brother. Brian, I need your help. Legal help. Silence. Brian Whitmore didn't do silence. 25 years as a divorce attorney had trained him to fill every pause with strategy, but this time, he was quiet for 3 long seconds. Come to my office, he said at last. Now. His office sat on the 10th floor of a downtown high-rise, overlooking Elliott Bay. Corner suite, expensive furniture, diplomas and bar certifications framed along one wall. The kind of office you earn after decades of winning custody wars and dismantling joint assets. He closed the door behind me. Brian was 4 years older, sharp-featured, gray threading through his dark hair. Gray, he'd stopped dying years ago. Gray makes opposing counsel underestimate me, he used to say. So I did. I told him everything. The parking garage footage, Victoria, the half-sister I never knew existed, born from our mother's affair 58 years ago, the wall of surveillance photos, 8 months of lies, Patricia Vaughn's pattern of seduction and financial manipulation in 4 cities, the LLC, Summit Healthcare Partners, co-signed by my husband and his lover, $180,000 siphoned from our joint account in small, deliberate transfers. Brian didn't interrupt. His face moved through shock, anger, then settled into the cold focus I'd seen in courtrooms. When I finished, he said one word, bastards. Then he opened his laptop. Here's where you stand legally, he said. You have grounds for at-fault divorce based on adultery. Washington is technically no fault, but documented adultery still influences asset division in certain contexts. The financial transfers strengthen your position significantly. And if that LLC involved interstate electronic transactions, we're looking at potential federal wire fraud. What are my options? He didn't hesitate. Monday morning, we file for divorce. We cite adultery and financial misconduct. At the same time, we file an emergency motion to freeze all joint accounts. That prevents him from moving or hiding additional funds. He paused, studying me. What do you want, Carly? Not the legal answer, the real one. I'd already decided. I want the house. I want every dollar back. And I want him to understand exactly what he destroyed. Brian's gaze sharpened. You're not asking for fairness. I'm asking for precision. He smiled slightly. Good. He pulled out a legal pad. Step 1, documentation. Every report from your PI, every surveillance photo, every financial statement, hotel receipts, time-stamped evidence. We build a case he cannot spin. Victoria's been documenting for 6 months. Excellent. He continued writing. Step 2, emergency account freeze. Once approved and with this evidence, it will be he cannot access funds without court authorization. He tapped his pen thoughtfully. Step 3, the house. Did Mom ever update the mortgage structure after Dad died? No. Why? He turned his laptop toward me. Because she inserted a protection clause when you refinanced. If the marriage dissolves under proven adultery, her estate retains an interest in the property. That protects your equity. He forfeits his claim. I stared at him. You're serious? Mom had seen too many women get wiped out in divorce. She drafted it to shield you. He gave me a look. Yes, ironic, considering her own history. But she protected you. Another layer I hadn't known existed. Step 4, Brian said. We leverage the LLC fraud. Participation in financial misconduct can shift asset division heavily in your favor. He didn't just cheat, he diverted joint funds. Courts take that seriously. Will it hold? With this level of documentation, yes. Especially if the FBI opens a file. What about Evan? His expression softened. He's 20. No custody issues. You tell him when you're ready. Legally, he's separate. I nodded, keeping the DNA question I'd been wrestling with to myself. One battle at a time, Carly, Brian said quietly, leaning forward. Once we file, this ends. Completely. No reconciliation window. Are you certain? My marriage ended 8 months ago, I replied. I just learned about it last week. He held my gaze, then nodded. Then we finish it properly. He reached for his phone. Judge Williams owes me a favor. I'll secure an emergency hearing Monday afternoon for temporary orders. That gives us the weekend to finalize everything. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said. This will get ugly. David will fight. Patricia will hire counsel the moment she senses pressure. If federal investigators step in, it escalates quickly. I have Victoria. I have Brenda. I have 6 months of documentation. And now I have you. That earned a different smile. Less attorney, more brother. Yes, he said. You do. When I stepped out of his office, my phone buzzed. Victoria, Arthur Kingsley, confirmed for tomorrow. 2 p.m., Ballard Cafe. He has evidence. A lot, I texted back. I'll be there. 3 days ago, I'd been shopping for my son's birthday present, believing I was in a solid marriage. I'd been blind, comfortable, trusting. Now I had a private investigator, a half-sister with a wall of evidence, an ex-husband of my husband's lover, flying in with documentation, and the best divorce attorney in the city drafting emergency motions. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was building a case. Saturday afternoon, I met Dr. Arthur Kingsley at a coffee shop in Ballard. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table away from the windows. 47. Polished in that professional way that spoke of years climbing corporate ladders, dark suit, minimal jewelry, hair neatly styled. But it was his eyes that told the real story, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. The kind of exhaustion that came from surviving something that should have destroyed you, Miss Thornton. He stood as I approached, offered his hand, firm grip, steady eye contact. Whatever Patricia had done to him, she hadn't let it break him completely. Thank you for agreeing to meet, I said, sitting across from him. Thank you for reaching out. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup like he needed the warmth. When Victoria called and explained the situation, said Patricia was working the same pattern again in Seattle, I knew I had to help. Tell me what happened between you and Patricia. He took a slow breath, organizing thoughts he'd probably organized 1,000 times before. We met 7 years ago. I was CFO at Oregon University Medical Hospital. Patricia was the new hire, brilliant cardiac surgeon, charming, younger than most department heads. She made an impression immediately. His mouth tightened. My marriage was struggling. 25 years. 2 kids already in college. My wife and I were basically roommates who shared a mortgage. The classic midlife crisis setup. I knew that feeling. The distance that grew so gradually you didn't notice until you were strangers living under the same roof. Patricia saw that, Arthur continued. Or maybe she engineered it. I don't know anymore. She made me feel understood, important, like I mattered beyond budget spreadsheets and board meetings. The affair started within 3 months. He said it clinically, like reading a medical chart. Detached. The only way to tell the story without drowning in it. 6 months in, she pitched the business idea. A medical equipment company. We'd source better quality supplies at lower costs, improve hospital procurement, make millions in the process. She called it a partnership between clinical expertise and financial management. Made it sound revolutionary. And how much did you invest? $400,000. My mother's inheritance. everything she'd left me. His jaw clenched. The equipment was real. The company was legitimate on paper. But the prices Patricia charged were inflated by 300, sometimes 400%, and the contracts she negotiated somehow always seemed to benefit her other ventures. When did you realize? Too late. By the time I started asking questions, Patricia had already structured everything to look like I was the one manipulating hospital contracts. When the internal investigation started, she had her lawyers ready. They convinced the board it was mutual misconduct, that I was equally guilty. I had to sign an NDA to avoid criminal charges. His hands trembled slightly around the cup. My wife filed for divorce when everything came out. The hospital terminated my position. I lost my job, my marriage, my reputation, and $400,000. Patricia moved to San Francisco with a clean record and a new position, and did it again. She did it at least twice more that I can confirm. San Francisco, then Denver. Maybe others I don't know about. He pulled out a folder from his bag. I've been building a file. Breaking my NDA could cost me legally, but I'm tired of watching her destroy people. He opened the folder. Inside were printouts, LinkedIn profiles, news articles, court records, financial documents, photos of 3 men besides himself. All professional, well-dressed, 40 something, all with that same tired look in their eyes. San Francisco, hospital administrator, divorced, lost approximately $300,000. Denver, another hospital administrator, same story, $250,000 gone. And now your husband in Seattle. The pattern was crystal clear when laid out like this. Hospital administrators, late 40s, married, assets. The same script playing out city after city, victim after victim. Why hasn't anyone stopped her, I asked. Shame, Arthur said simply. These men, myself included, would have to admit to affairs, risk what's left of our careers and reputations. The NDAs are ironclad. The hospitals want to avoid scandal, and Patricia's smart about keeping amounts below felony thresholds in most jurisdictions. He leaned forward. But if we could get multiple victims to testify together, build a federal wire fraud case instead of local criminal charges, maybe we could actually stop her. I want to do more than stop her, I said. I want to catch her in the act, get her on record admitting what she's done. How? My husband doesn't know I know about the affair. He thinks his secret is safe. If I could get him to cooperate, wear a wire, record Patricia confessing to the fraud, he'd have to flip on her, Arthur said slowly. Betray someone he thinks he's in love with. Why would he do that? Because I'll give him a choice. Help us take Patricia down, or go down as her accomplice. He signed documents, co-signed the LLC, participated in fund transfers. Legally, he's as guilty as she is. Arthur studied me with those tired, sharp eyes. You're not doing this just to save your marriage. My marriage ended 8 months ago. I'm doing this because she needs to be stopped, because you deserve justice, because those other men deserve to know they weren't alone, and because my husband deserves to understand exactly what kind of woman he's been protecting. Arthur was quiet for a long moment, then he slid the folder across the table. I'll testify, he said. I'll break my NDA, I'll contact the other victims, and see if they'll come forward. I don't care about the legal consequences anymore. I just want Patricia Vaughn facing real justice for once in her life. I looked at the folder. 4 men's faces staring up at me from the documents. 4 lives dismantled by the same woman who was currently dismantling mine. She will, I said. We'll make sure of it. Because this wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or betrayed trust or 25 years wasted. This was about stopping a predator. And we finally had an army strong enough to do it. The Seattle Grace Hospital annual fundraising gala was the kind of night where the city's medical elite gathered beneath crystal chandeliers to applaud their own brilliance. David had been excited for weeks. I had been preparing for 3 days. He bought a new tuxedo that cost more than my weekly paycheck, scheduled a haircut, talked endlessly about board members, wealthy donors, and department heads angling for promotion. That morning, I bought an evening gown. The clerk asked if it was for a wedding. Something like that, I told her. Now, we stood in the Fairmont Olympics Grand Ballroom, the same hotel where he'd spent Monday afternoons in room 847 with Patricia Vaughn, and I watched him perform. He glided between hospital administrators, laughing lightly, shaking hands, embodying the devoted executive. He was still the man who had caught my eye 25 years ago. Still handsome, still magnetic, still capable of lighting up a room. I just hadn't realized that glow included 8 months of betrayal with a cardiac surgeon. Victoria was outside in a valet uniform, arranged through an old private investigator contact. Brian stood near the bar in a dark suit, poised and watchful, playing my supportive brother while serving as a legal witness. Under my silk gown, pressed flat against my side, a recording device captured everything. Washington was a one-party consent state. Every word spoken tonight would be documented. "There's Dr. Vaughn," David said, touching my arm. His eyes had already found her across the room. They always did. "I should introduce you. She's been incredibly helpful with board politics. Lead the way." He laced his fingers through mine, his wedding ring flashing beneath the chandeliers, and guided me through the crowd. Patricia stood at the bar among surgeons in tailored suits, radiating the confidence of people who held beating hearts in their hands. She was tall, fit, composed, the kind of doctor patients trusted instantly. Her gaze found David before we reached her. I saw recognition heat, then the swift shift to professional neutrality. She was practiced, comfortable. "Dr. Vaughn," David said warmly, "this is my wife, Carly Thornton." She extended her hand. "Miss Thornton, a pleasure." Her grip was firm. Her eyes assessed me in seconds. Business owner, mid, 50s, not part of this world. I watched her dismiss me as harmless. "David speaks highly of you," I said evenly. "He's invaluable to the hospital," she replied, smiling at him in a way that suggested something private. "I'm sure." I let the silence linger. "He's told me so much about you these past few months. I feel like I already know you." A flicker crossed her face. "Your work," I continued casually, "your investment advice, your ventures, Summit Healthcare Partners. David mentioned your co-founders." The color drained from her face. David's grip tightened on my hand. "Carly, I've been studying how that company operates," I said, lowering my voice slightly. "Pricing structures, vendor contracts, transfer patterns. My business teaches you to respect documentation." "I don't know what you're implying," Patricia said. "I know everything," I replied quietly. "Every meeting, every transfer, every hotel room. Fairmont Olympic, room 847, Monday afternoons, 2.5 hours, on average. Summit Healthcare Partners, registered March 20th, co-signed by you and my husband, $180,000 transferred from our joint accounts in 6 months. David made a small, strangled sound. Patricia's charm dissolved. Her eyes hardened. "You don't know what you're dealing with. Try me." She leaned closer, voice sharp. "I have friends, board members, city council. I'm a respected cardiac surgeon. You're an architect. Who do you think they'll believe?" I smiled. Because she had just handed me exactly what I needed, recorded, preserved. "Let's find out," I said. Then I raised my voice just enough for nearby guests to glance over. "Very nice meeting you, Dr. Vaughn. Enjoy the evening." I turned and walked away without looking back, leaving them frozen beneath crystal light and polished marble. Behind me, panic spread in subtle ripples. Victoria stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watchful. She caught my eye and gave a single nod. Phase 1 was complete. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the ballroom's music muffled behind heavy doors. My pulse finally began to slow. Everything had unfolded exactly as planned. David followed minutes later, his dress shoes striking the pavement sharply. "What have you done?" he demanded, voice trembling. "Nothing," I said calmly. "Yet." The car waited at the curb. Victoria opened the door for him with professional neutrality, as though she were just another valet, not a witness to a collapsing marriage. Inside, the silence was suffocating. "You're embarrassing yourself," he hissed. "You have no idea how powerful Patricia is." "I'm aware," I replied. He stared at me, searching for uncertainty. He found none. "Carly," he said, softer now, We can talk about this at home. We are talking. His mask slipped just slightly. Fear crept into his eyes. What he didn't know was that the device in my purse was still recording. Every accusation, every threat, every admission. The legal battle ahead would not rely on rumors or whispered suspicions. It would rest on evidence. Financial records, corporate filings, transaction logs, and now, recorded words spoken in anger. He thought tonight had been about humiliation. It hadn't. It had been about leverage. Victoria handed me the car keys at the valet stand. Her eyes asked a silent question. "You okay?" I gave her a single nod. "It's done." David followed me across the parking garage without speaking. His shoes clicked against concrete, echoing in the cavernous space. Still in shock, maybe, or already calculating his next offense. I opened the passenger door for him, 25 years of muscle memory, and he slid in mechanically, that new tuxedo looking suddenly out of place. I closed the door, walked around to the driver's side, got in, started the engine. The silence between us was already suffocating. I pulled out of the Fairmont's garage and onto the wet Seattle streets. Rain had started while we were inside, soft at first, then building to a steady rhythm against the windshield. David sat rigid beside me, staring straight ahead, hands folded in his lap. He didn't speak until we merged onto I-5, heading north toward Bellevue. When he finally found his voice, it came out tight, controlled, still trying to manage the situation. "What the hell just happened back there?" That was me being honest for the first time in a week. "You embarrassed me in front of I embarrassed you?" My hands tightened on the wheel. "That's really what you're concerned about right now? Carly, whatever you think you know, stop." The word came out harder than I'd intended. Don't insult me with denials. Silence. Just rain and road noise and the sound of 25 years cracking apart. "I saw you," I said quietly. "At the parking garage. Saturday, 8 days ago. With her. I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled onto the shoulder. Right there on I-5. Rain pouring, traffic rushing past. Put the car in park, turned to face him directly. "David, I have video. 8 months of surveillance. Hotel check-ins, financial records, LLC documents with your signature. I have everything." The color drained from his face. All that careful control evaporated. "Oh, God. How long?" My voice stayed level, clinical. "Before you insult me with explanations, just tell me, how long have you been sleeping with her?" He stared at his hands. His wedding ring caught light from passing headlights. 8 months, he whispered. "Since February." "Valentine's Day. How romantic." "Carly, please. And the money? The $180,000 you stole?" "She said it was an investment. I pulled Arthur's folder from my briefcase, dropped it in his lap." "She's a professional con artist. Open it." His hands trembled as he opened the folder. I watched his face as he read, watched the horror settle in. Photos of 3 other men. Portland, San Francisco, Denver, all hospital administrators, all married, all mid-40s. Same pattern, same promises, same lies. "No, this can't be." Patricia wouldn't. I showed him my phone. Screenshots Brenda had recovered from cloud backups. Patricia's messages to previous victims. "You're the only one who understands me. We can have a real future together. Just trust me with this investment." Word for word identical to messages she'd sent him. He scrolled through them, hands shaking. I watched the fantasy shatter. Watched him realize he'd never been special. Just another mark in a pattern going back years. She doesn't love me. Hollow. Broken. No, she never did. I destroyed everything for. His voice cracked. Oh God, what have I done?" He started crying. Deep, wrenching sobs. I felt nothing. "I want you out of the house by tomorrow morning," I said. I filed for separation. Brian's my attorney. Monday, the court freezes our accounts. Divorce papers come next week. You can't just I can. You committed adultery, financial fraud, theft, 8 months of lies. I paused, maybe longer. He went very still. "What do you mean, Evan?" I kept my eyes on the road as I pulled back into traffic. "He's not mine. Is he? Silence. I'm type O. You're type B. Evan's type A. That's genetically impossible if I'm his biological mother. Carly, please. Who was it? Someone before we married? During? Does it even matter anymore? He didn't answer, just kept crying. 20 minutes later, I pulled into our driveway. The house I'd bought, renovated, made into a home. The house where I'd raised another woman's son. Get out. He stumbled from the car, that expensive tuxedo now rumpled and damp. I watched him fumble with his keys, disappear through the front door. I sat there, engine idling, rain drumming on the roof. Tomorrow, everything would change. Monday, the legal machinery would start. By next week, divorce papers would be served. By next month, it would be over. But tonight, I just sat in my driveway and felt the weight of 25 years turning to ash. Not satisfaction, not victory, just a hollow, aching emptiness where my marriage used to be. The DNA test results arrived Monday morning via encrypted email. I sat in Brian's office, staring at the laptop screen, reading the lines over and over. Medical terminology, lab certification numbers, charts showing genetic markers that meant nothing to me. And at the bottom, in bold, asterisk asterisk, probability of maternity, 0%. Asterisk asterisk Carly. Brian's voice came from somewhere far away. I closed the laptop, sat back, looked at my hands. He's not my son. 20 years. Every birthday party where I'd carried the cake while everyone sang. Every baseball game where I taught him to swing level, keep his eye on the ball. Every parent-teacher conference where teachers told me what a good kid he was, how proud I must be. Every time he'd said, "I love you, Mom," before bed. "I'm so sorry," Brian said quietly. "Are you?" I stood, walked to the window. Downtown Seattle stretched below buildings and traffic and people living their normal Monday mornings. Because I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel right now. However you feel is valid. The blood types, I said, still staring out the window. I looked it up last week. Type O and type B can't produce type A. It's genetically impossible. I turned to face him. 20 years of diapers and homework and parent-teacher conferences. 20 years teaching him to ride a bike, drive a car, be a good man. And none of it was real. Stop. Brian's voice was sharp. He stood, came around his desk. Don't do that. Don't let David's lie poison what you built with that boy. It was built on your choice to love him, to show up, to be there. He pointed at the closed laptop. That test tells you about biology. It doesn't tell you about motherhood. You've been his mother in every way that matters. But he's not. He's your son, Carly. You raised him. Biology doesn't determine that. Love does. Time does. Presence does. His eyes were fierce. That number on the screen, that's not 0. What you've given him for 20 years, that's everything. I sank back into the chair, felt something in my chest crack open. How do I tell him? My voice came out rough. That his whole life is built on his father's lie. Brian sat on the edge of his desk. Does he need to know right now? He's 20, away at college. Senior year, the most critical time for his development, his career plans, his sense of identity. He paused. Telling him now would destroy him. So I just what? Lie by omission? No. You wait until after graduation. Until he's stable, employed, ready to process something this devastating. Until you're ready to have that conversation. I thought about Evan, engineering senior. Job interviews coming up, his whole future ahead of him. We wait, I said finally, and we protect that choice. Brian pulled up a document on his computer. Non-disclosure clause in the divorce settlement. David is prohibited from telling Evan about the paternity. If he violates it, he faces financial penalties and contempt charges. That feels wrong. Like I'm covering up the truth. You're not covering it up. You're controlling when and how Evan learns something that will fundamentally reshape his understanding of himself. Brian turned the screen toward me. You can tell him later, when he's ready. When you're ready. But David doesn't get to weaponize that truth in anger or spite. You decide. Not him. I stared at the clause, read it 3 times. On my terms, I said, not his. Exactly. Brian opened another folder. Let's talk asset division. He walked me through it. Clinical, professional, 25 years reduced to spreadsheets. The house, $800,000 in equity, would go to me. Mom's infidelity clause. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother, who'd had her own affair that produced Victoria, had still thought to protect me from the same fate. Retirement accounts, $1.4 million total. I'd keep $1.2 million. David would keep only his own 401, about $200,000. He'd forfeited the joint savings through fraud and theft. My architecture firm, $500,000 in value, stayed entirely mine, built before and during the marriage, but he'd forfeited any claim through adultery, no alimony. At-fault divorce plus financial fraud meant he walked away with almost nothing. The emergency hearing is at 2, Brian said. Judge Williams will freeze the joint accounts today. David won't be able to touch another dollar without court permission. And the divorce papers will be served by end of week. He paused. This is really happening, Carly. Once we file, once these accounts freeze, there's no going back. Are you ready? I thought about Evan, away at college, unaware that his family was imploding. Unaware that his father had lied about his maternity for 20 years. Unaware that I was fighting to protect him from truths he wasn't ready to handle. I thought about David, who'd stolen 20 years of truth from both of us, who'd built our family on lies I was still uncovering. I thought about Patricia Vaughn, who'd destroyed multiple lives for money and ego and would have walked away clean if I hadn't stopped her. I'm ready, I said. Let's end this. Brian slid the papers across his desk. I picked up the pen and signed. Monday evening, I sat alone in the house that was finally just mine. The silence felt different now, not empty, just quiet. David had been gone since Saturday night. His things were still upstairs, clothes, books, shoes, but he was gone. Staying at some hotel downtown, probably using the credit card I hadn't frozen yet. That would change tomorrow morning. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Voicemail notification. David's number. I stared at it for a long moment, debated not listening. But curiosity, or maybe strategy, won out. I hit play. At first, I thought he was calling me. Then I heard the rustling sounds, muffled movement, the hollow acoustic of a phone in a purse or pocket dial. He'd called me by accident. And then I heard his voice, trembling, talking to someone else. Patricia, please pick up, please. My hand tightened on the phone, ringing sounds through the recording. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a click. What? Patricia's voice came through, cold, flat. Nothing like the charming surgeon who'd smiled at me at the gala. Oh, thank God. David's voice was thick with tears. Carly, she knows everything. About us, about the money, everything. She froze the accounts, filed for divorce. I told you not to call me. Patricia, what do we do? I don't know what to we. Her voice turned sharp. There is no we anymore, David. Silence. Then David's voice, smaller, broken. What do you mean? I mean, you were careless. You let yourself get caught. I can't be associated with any of this. But you said we'd start over together. California, the practice we'd build. I said a lot of things. Matter of fact, like she was discussing weather. Look, this was fun while it lasted, but you've become a liability. A liability? His voice cracked. Patricia, I left everything for you. My marriage, the LLC is in your name. The transfers came from your accounts. Your signature is on everything. Each word was a door slamming shut. Good luck explaining that to your lawyer. You can't just, Patricia. Please, watch me. Click. The line went dead. For several seconds, there was nothing but the sound of David breathing. Then, he started sobbing. Deep, wrenching sounds that might have moved me 2 weeks ago. Now I just listened clinically. Evidence. Every word was evidence. Oh God, he whispered to himself through the tears. She never loved me. She was just using me all along. Oh God, what have I done? The voicemail cut off. Time limit reached. I stood in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, staring at nothing. Then I played it again, listened to the whole thing a second time. Patricia's cold dismissal, David's realization hitting in real time. The confirmation that everything Arthur had told me was true. Patricia Vaughn was a professional. She'd done this before. She'd do it again, unless we stopped her. I saved the voicemail, forwarded it to myself via email, backed it up 3 different ways. This was exactly what we needed. A knock at the door pulled me out of my thoughts. I opened it to find Victoria holding 2 bags of Chinese takeout. "Figured you hadn't eaten," she said, walking past me into the kitchen, like she'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. "I've been eating. Coffee and rage don't count as a meal." She started unpacking containers. Kung Pao chicken, fried rice, egg rolls. Despite everything, I almost smiled. "Since when are you my nutritionist? Since I'm your sister, and somebody needs to make sure you don't self-destruct." She grabbed plates from the cabinet, somehow already knew where they were. "You look like hell, by the way. Thanks. What are sisters for?" We sat at the kitchen table. Victoria handed me a fork. "So, something happened," she said. Not a question. I pulled out my phone. "David pocket dialed me about an hour ago. Left a voicemail." I hit play. Victoria's face went darker with every word. By the time Patricia said, "Watch me," and hung up, her jaw was clenched tight. "That son of a bitch," she said quietly. Patricia just gift-wrapped us a confession and made David desperate. Victoria looked up at me. "Desperate people cooperate. That's what I'm counting on." I took a bite of chicken. First real food I'd eaten all day. Give him one more day. Let him realize he's completely alone. Patricia's gone. I'm gone. The money's about to be gone. Then we approach him about the wire. "You think he'll do it?" "What choice does he have?" I picked up my phone, played the voicemail one more time. David's voice. "She never loved me. She was just using me. He's finally seeing what we've known all along. Patricia Vaughn is a predator, and he was just another mark. He'll throw her under the bus. He already has. We just need to make it official." Victoria nodded slowly, picked up her beer. "You know what's weird?" "What?" "I don't even hate him anymore." I said it before I'd really thought about it. "I just feel done." Victoria studied me for a moment, then nodded. "That's maturity. Or exhaustion. Sometimes they're the same thing." My phone buzzed. Text from Brian. "Emergency hearing approved. Accounts frozen as of 8 a.m. tomorrow." He's cut off. I showed Victoria. She raised her beer. "To consequences." I picked up mine. "To consequences." We clinked bottles. And for the first time in 2 weeks, since that Saturday afternoon in the parking garage when my world had imploded, I almost smiled. Tomorrow, we'd approach David about cooperation. But tonight, sitting in my kitchen with the sister I never knew I needed, eating Chinese food and planning strategic strikes, I felt something shift. Control. It was finally coming back. 2 weeks passed since Patricia abandoned him. 2 weeks we let David stew in that hotel room, isolated and desperate. Patricia's silence confirmed what the voicemail had already proven. She'd discarded him the moment he became a liability. The accounts had been frozen since September 24th. He was living on a credit card that would max out soon, eating room service and searching job sites that wouldn't hire someone whose professional reputation was about to implode. Brian had been monitoring the situation. "He's desperate enough now," he'd said Tuesday evening. "Time to move." Wednesday morning, the 3 of us, me, Brian, and Victoria, arrived at the Courtyard Marriott near Seattle Grace Hospital. Room 314, I knocked. The man who opened the door was barely recognizable. No designer suit, just sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, hair unkempt, eyes swollen, and red from crying. This was the same man who'd worn that new tuxedo to the gala 2 weeks ago, radiant and confident and completely unaware his world was collapsing. "Carly," his voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd This isn't a social call, David. This isn't a request," I said. He stepped back, letting us in. The hotel room told its own story. Unmade bed, room service trays stacked on the desk, laptop open to LinkedIn, and Indeed, evidence of a desperate job search that wasn't going anywhere. The clinical smell of industrial cleaning products, mixed with stale coffee, Brian walked in first, professional and cold. I'm Brian Whitmore, Carly's brother and attorney. We're here to discuss your options. David looked between us, confusion mixing with fear. My options? You're facing federal wire fraud charges. Brian's voice was crisp, clinical. The $180,000 you transferred to Summit Healthcare Partners constitutes federal bank fraud. That's a federal crime. 5 to 10 years in prison if convicted. David's legs seemed to give out. He sank onto the unmade bed. I didn't know. Ignorance isn't a defense. You signed the documents. You executed the transfers. You're an accomplice. Brian pulled out a folder. Patricia Vaughn has said the same things to 3 other men. Take a look. He handed over Arthur's folder. David opened it with shaking hands. I watched his face drain of color as he read. Portland, San Francisco, Denver. 3 men before him. Same pattern, same lies, same promises. Oh God, he whispered. The FBI is building a case against her, Brian continued. They need someone who was involved. Someone who can testify. David looked up slowly. You want me to testify against Patricia? We want you to wear a wire, Brian said. Get her to admit the fraud on tape. Then testify when the case goes to trial. She'll destroy me. I spoke for the first time since entering. She already destroyed you. My voice was calm, factual, not cruel, but not kind either. You lost your wife. You're about to lose your home. Your reputation is gone. Patricia doesn't care about you. She hasn't called back because you're no longer useful to her. David flinched, like I'd slapped him. Here are your options, Brian said. Cooperate, and we can keep this quiet. Immunity deal, sealed records, no publicity. You lose Carly and the house, but you don't lose Evan. You don't go to prison. You get a chance to rebuild some kind of life. He paused, letting that sink in. Or, don't cooperate. We prosecute you alongside Patricia. You lose everything, including any chance at a relationship with your son. At Evan's name, David's head snapped up. Did you tell him? No, I said, because despite everything, I don't want to destroy my son's life. But if you don't cooperate, if you force us to go to trial, everything becomes public. Evan will know exactly what kind of person his father is. That's blackmail. That's reality, Brian cut in. David looked between us, desperate for a way out that didn't exist. If I do this, he said finally, voice barely above a whisper, will it change anything between us? No, I kept my voice level. The divorce proceeds as planned. You keep your 401, you get immunity. That's more than you deserve. More silence. David was crying now, quiet tears running down his face. I'll do it, he said. I'll wear the wire. Brian pulled out paperwork. FBI agent Owen Ramsey will contact you within 4 hours. He'll brief you on the operation. You'll need to contact Patricia, arrange a meeting. The wire will record everything. What do I say to her? The truth, I said. That you're scared, that I'm threatening you, that you need her help. She's arrogant enough to believe you're still under her control. David nodded, hands shaking as he took the immunity agreement from Brian. I'm sorry, Carly. His voice broke. For everything I never meant for. I stood, headed for the door. Outside in the hotel corridor, Victoria put a hand on my shoulder. That was brutal. That was necessary, I corrected. She studied me for a moment, nodded slowly. We walked to the elevator in silence. As the doors closed, I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction, not victory, just completion. The legal machinery was in motion now. David would cooperate, or he'd face consequences alone. Either way, Patricia Vaughn's time was running out, and she had no idea the trap was closing around him. Thursday morning, we met at the FBI field office in downtown Seattle. The building was exactly what you'd expect. Sterile, imposing, the kind of place designed to make you feel small and exposed. Security checkpoints, badge scanners, agents moving through hallways with the quiet efficiency of people who'd seen everything. Agent Owen Ramsey looked like he'd seen most of it. Mid, 40s, maybe pushing 50. Gray suit, white shirt, dark tie. Eyes that had witnessed too much white-collar crime, and stopped being surprised by human greed years ago. We gathered in an interrogation room. Me, David, and Brian. Victoria was next door in the observation room, watching through the one-way glass. David had barely spoken since agreeing to cooperate yesterday. He sat rigid in the metal chair, hands folded in his lap, looking like someone waiting for execution. Agent Ramsey entered, carrying a thick file folder. He set it on the table, looked at David with those tired eyes. "Mr. Thornton, thank you for agreeing to cooperate." He nodded mutely. "Let's clarify the terms," Ramsey said, pulling out papers. "You cooperate fully, you wear a wire. You get Dr. Vaughn to admit the fraud on tape. In return, you receive immunity from federal wire fraud prosecution. The charges against you will be dropped and sealed." David's voice was barely audible. "My son? He won't know? That's between you and your ex-wife. The FBI doesn't disclose case details unless necessary for prosecution. Since you're cooperating, you won't be named as a co-conspirator in public records. You'll be listed as a witness, not a defendant." He looked at me. "You'll keep it from Evan? For now?" I said. "The kid doesn't need details. He knows we're divorcing because of your affair. That's enough." He flinched but didn't argue. Ramsey opened the file folder. "Let's talk about Dr. Patricia Vaughn's other victims." He spread photos across the table. 5 men, 5 different cities. Henry Shepard, San Diego, 8 years ago, recently came forward. Dr. Arthur Kingsley, Oregon, 7 years ago. Unnamed victim, San Francisco, 6 years ago. Adam Sutton, Portland, 4 years ago. Victor Porter, Denver, 3 years ago. And you, Seattle, this year. David stared at the photos, face draining of color. Over $2 million stolen across 10 years. 4 different hospitals. Identical pattern every time. Ramsey pulled out another document. She even used the same words. He showed David a comparison sheet. Messages Patricia had sent to each victim. Patricia to Arthur, "You're the only one who understands me." Patricia to Adam, "You're the only one who understands me." Patricia to David, "You're the only one who understands me." Word for word, identical. A copy-paste con job. She said I was special," David whispered. "That she'd never felt this way with anyone." "She told all of them the same thing," Ramsey said. "Not unkind, but factual. In some cases, word for word. You weren't special, Mr. Thornton. You were a target who fit her profile." He looked like he might be sick. "Here's how this works," Ramsey continued. "This afternoon, you'll call Dr. Vaughn. Tell her you're scared, that your wife is threatening you with fraud charges, that you need her help. She'll come to your hotel. People like her can't resist the opportunity to reassert control. What if she suspects? She won't. You're desperate and frightened. That's exactly what she expects. That's what makes you controllable in her mind." Ramsey leaned forward. "People like Patricia Vaughn rely on power dynamics. She thinks you're weak. That's her weakness. Underestimating people." He pulled a small device from his briefcase. "This is a wire. We'll attach it between your ribs, under your shirt, invisible. You'll meet Patricia in your hotel room. FBI agents will be in the adjacent room, monitoring everything. Your job is simple. Get her talking about the LLC, the money, her pattern. She'll incriminate herself if she thinks you're still on her side." David's hands were shaking. "What do I say?" "The truth, that you're terrified, that you don't know what to do. Ask her for advice. She'll give it. And in doing so, she'll admit to everything." Ramsey slid a phone across the table. "Clean phone, untraceable. Call her now, arrange the meeting." David picked it up with trembling fingers, looked at me one more time. I nodded. He dialed, hit speaker, 4 rings. Then Patricia's voice, irritated. "I told you not to call me. Patricia, please." David's voice broke perfectly, genuine fear mixed with performance. "I need help. Carly's threatening me with fraud charges. The FBI. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so scared." Silence. I could almost hear her calculating on the other end. "Where are you?" Hotel near the hospital. Patricia, I don't know how to send me the address. I'll come by this afternoon. A pause. But David, this is the last time. You need to get your situation under control. I will. I promise. Just, please help me figure out what to do. 3 p.m. Don't call me again until then. Click. David set the phone down. Hands still shaking. She's coming. Good. Ramsey stood. Let's get you wired. After the briefing, outside in the FBI parking garage, Brian pulled me aside. You know this might not work, he said quietly. Patricia's smart. She might not say anything incriminating. She will, I said. Her arrogance will bury her. She thinks David's weak. She thinks he'll crumble. She has no idea he's already cooperating. And if she doesn't incriminate herself? I looked back at the FBI building. Then we have Arthur's testimony. Adams, Victor's. And David's immunity means he'll testify too. Patricia Vaughn is finished either way. Today just determines how quickly. Brian studied me for a moment, nodded. Then, let's make sure it's quick. That afternoon, at 2:50 p.m., I sat in room 316, watching a video monitor. On the screen, David paced back and forth in room 314, his hands shaking. He'd been in there alone for 10 minutes, waiting. Agent Ramsey stood beside me, one hand on his earpiece, his voice barely a whisper into his mic. Remember what we discussed, Mr. Thornton. Let her talk. Don't push. Just listen. On the screen, David nodded. He looked exhausted. The new tuxedo from the gala was long gone. Today, he wore jeans and a plain sweater. His hair was a mess. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Victoria stood behind me, arms crossed. Brian was beside her, taking notes on his tablet. None of us spoke. At 2:55 p.m., there was a knock on the door of room 314. David jumped. His hand went to his ribs, where the recording device sat hidden beneath his sweater. Then he walked to the door and opened it. Patricia Vaughn stepped inside. She wore surgical scrubs under a jacket. She must have come straight from the hospital. Her expression was cold, impatient. This better be important, David. I've got surgery in 2 hours. David closed the door behind her. His voice was small, frightened. Carly knows everything. Patricia's jaw tightened. She glanced around the room, as if checking for cameras. Then she turned back to him. What do you mean, everything? She knows about us. She knows about the money. She showed me files, photos. She says you've done this before. To other men. In Portland, San Francisco, Denver. Patricia's face darkened. She stepped closer to David, her voice dropping. Your wife is fabricating stories because she's angry. That's what bitter women do when they lose. David shook his head. He was crying now. She froze our accounts, Patricia. She filed for separation. She says I helped you steal money, that I signed documents, that it was a legitimate business investment that made me part of a fraud scheme. Patricia grabbed his arm, not hard, but firm enough to make him flinch. Listen to me. Summit Healthcare Partners was a real company. We sold medical equipment at competitive prices. If your wife is trying to turn that into something criminal, she's desperate. David pulled his arm free. His voice broke. Then why did you stop answering my calls? Why did you tell me you loved me and then disappear the second Carly confronted you at the gala? I needed time to think. You needed time to run. Patricia's mask slipped, just for a second, long enough for me to see the woman beneath the surgeon's confidence. The con artist. The predator. What do you want from me, David? I want the truth. His voice was shaking, but he held her gaze. How long were you planning this? How many men have you done this to? Patricia exhaled slowly. She walked to the window, her back to him. When she spoke again, her tone was different. Colder. More calculated. You weren't the first, and you won't be the last. In room 316, Ramsey leaned forward. Victoria's hand tightened on my shoulder. On the screen, David stood frozen. What? Patricia turned to face him. I've been doing this for 10 years. Portland, San Francisco, Denver. You were just easier than most. Married, middle-aged, lonely. You had access to money, and you wanted to believe someone still saw you. David's face went white. You used me. I gave you what you wanted. I made you feel special, and you paid for that privilege. That's how it works. You told me you loved me. Patricia laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. I told you what you needed to hear. Just like I told Adam in Portland. Just like I told Victor in Denver. Men like you are easy, David. You're so desperate for attention that you'll sign anything, transfer anything, believe anything. She stepped closer to him. And when your wife comes after me with lawyers, I'll remind her that every transaction was consensual. Every document has your signature. You're not a victim. You're a co-conspirator. David took a step back. His hand went to his chest, where the recording device was hidden. His voice was barely a whisper. You're a monster. Patricia shrugged. I'm a businesswoman, and if you're smart, you'll keep your mouth shut about this. Because if you talk to the FBI, you go down with me. She turned and walked to the door. She opened it, paused, and looked back at him one last time. Consider this a lesson. Then she was gone. In room 314, David collapsed onto the bed. His shoulders shook as he cried. In room 316, Agent Ramsey took off his headphones. He looked at me, at Brian, at Victoria. We got her. He turned to one of the other agents in the room. Prepare an arrest warrant. We'll pick her up tomorrow morning at Seattle Grace. I want it public. I want every doctor, every nurse, every patient in that hospital to see her in handcuffs. He looked back at the monitor where David was still crying. Send someone in to check on him. Tell him he did well. Brian closed his tablet. Victoria let out a long breath. I stood up. Ramsey turned off the monitor. He looked at me. We'll arrest her tomorrow at the hospital, in front of her colleagues. He paused. Do you want to be there? I nodded. Yes, I do. Friday morning, 7 a.m. I stood in the parking lot of Seattle Grace Hospital, a cup of takeout coffee in my hand. Brian was beside me, checking his phone. Victoria leaned against my car, arms crossed, watching the main entrance. Here we go, Brian murmured as 3 black SUVs pulled into the lot. The FBI. Agent Ramsey had planned this carefully. 7:15 a.m. Shift change. Maximum witnesses. Maximum impact. I took a sip of coffee and waited. Through the glass doors of the main entrance, I could see the hospital lobby. Nurses in scrubs, doctors with tablets, security guards at their posts, and then I saw her, Dr. Patricia Vaughn, walking down the main corridor in surgical scrubs. She was mid-conversation with 2 residents, probably discussing a procedure. Her posture was confident, relaxed. She had no idea what was coming. Agent Ramsey and 3 other agents stepped through the entrance doors. Patricia looked up, confused at first, then shocked. Ramsey said something I couldn't hear from where I stood. Patricia's face shifted confusion, then recognition, then rage. One of the agents pulled out a pair of handcuffs. Patricia took a step back. Her mouth moved, probably denying everything, demanding to speak to her lawyer. But Ramsey didn't hesitate. He nodded to one of the other agents, who stepped forward and cuffed Patricia's hands behind her back. The nurses stopped walking. A resident dropped his coffee cup. Everyone in the lobby turned to stare. Phones came out. People started recording. Ramsey gestured toward the main hallway, and the agents began walking Patricia through the hospital. Not the back exit, not the service corridor, the main hallway. Past the nurses' stations, past the surgical suites, past the administrative offices. A perp walk. Patricia, still in her surgical scrubs, still wearing her hospital ID badge, handcuffed and escorted by federal agents through the hospital, where she'd worked for 2 years. I watched through the glass as they walked her past her colleagues, past the people who'd trusted her, past the administrators who'd hired her. Her face was red, her jaw clenched, but she kept her eyes down. The agents reached the main entrance and pushed open the doors. Patricia stepped outside into the morning sunlight. And then she saw me. I was standing beside my car, 50 feet away, coffee cup raised in a mock salute. Even from that distance, I saw the moment she recognized me, saw the hatred flare in her eyes. I didn't smile, didn't say anything, just held her gaze. Brian glanced at me. You're vindictive. I'm thorough. The agents led Patricia toward one of the SUVs. That's when the news vans arrived. 3 of them, pulling into the lot with cameras already rolling. The FBI had tipped them off. Ramsey had told me they would. Reporters jumped out, microphones in hand. Dr. Vaughn, are the charges true? How many victims were there? Did Seattle Grace know about the fraud? Patricia said nothing, just ducked her head as the agents opened the back door of the SUV and guided her inside. The door slammed. The SUV pulled away. By noon, every doctor, nurse, and administrator in Seattle's medical community would know. By evening, it would be on the regional news. My phone buzzed. A text from Arthur Kingsley. I just saw the news. Thank you. After 4 years, there's finally justice. I typed back, she won't be able to hurt anyone else. That's what matters. Another message came through, from David. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at it for a moment. Then I deleted it without replying. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Wilma Prescott, CEO of Seattle Grace Hospital, I answered. Miss Thornton. Her voice was formal, careful. I wanted to personally apologize. We had no knowledge of Dr. Vaughn's activities outside the hospital. I appreciate that. Your contracts with us remain intact. In fact, we'd like to discuss expanding our partnership. I kept my voice professional. I'll have my office reach out next week. Thank you. And again, our deepest apologies. She hung up. The hospital was protecting itself, distancing from Patricia. Smart. Victoria pushed off from my car. Coffee? I nodded. We walked 3 blocks to a small cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. A TV mounted above the counter was tuned to the local news. Breaking news this morning. A prominent Seattle surgeon has been arrested on federal wire fraud charges. Dr. Patricia Vaughn, a cardiac surgeon at Seattle Grace Hospital, is accused of defrauding multiple men over the course of a decade. Brian ordered a latte. Victoria got black coffee. I just wanted to sit. We found a table by the window. On the TV, footage of Patricia being led out of the hospital played on a loop. Brian sipped his latte. She'll be out on bail by tonight, but the damage is done. Victoria nodded. The medical board will suspend her license pending trial. I leaned back in my chair. Ramsey said the trial will be in 3 to 4 months. Arthur, Adam, Victor, David, they'll all testify. She's looking at 15 to 20 years, Brian said. On the TV, a reporter stood outside Seattle Grace, recounting Patricia's history, the victims, the pattern, the fake LLCs. Victoria looked at me. How do you feel? I thought about it. 25 years of marriage, gone. A sister I'd never known existed. A son who wasn't mine biologically, but was mine in every way that mattered. A husband who'd lied about everything. A surgeon who'd conned us both, now facing federal prison. I feel like I can finally breathe, I said, and I meant it. Patricia was under arrest. David was cooperating. The divorce would be finalized soon. The house, the business, the money, all of it would stay with me. In a few weeks, Evan would come home for Thanksgiving, and I'd have to decide when to tell him the truth. Not if, when, but today. Today, justice had been served. Victoria raised her coffee cup. 2 consequences. Brian and I clinked our cups against hers. On the TV above the counter, the news anchor moved on to the next story. But the image of Patricia in handcuffs, being led through the hospital in her surgical scrubs, stayed in my mind. That was the image that would define her now. Not the brilliant surgeon, not the charming doctor, the con artist, the criminal, the woman who'd finally been caught. I took a sip of my coffee and watched the morning light filter through the cafe window. For the first time in 5 weeks, I felt something close to peace. 2.5 weeks had passed since Patricia's arrest. The paperwork was processed. David had cooperated with the FBI, and the fraud charges against him were dropped in exchange for testimony. On Monday, October 28th, we met for divorce mediation. Brian walked beside me into the office, neutral walls, bland art, a conference table built for endings. David was already seated with his court-appointed attorney, Helen Moss. I barely recognized him. No designer suit, minimal grooming, hair unkempt. The confident man from the gala was gone. In his place sat someone exhausted, defeated. He glanced at me briefly, then looked away. Dr. Judith Kenwood, the mediator, sat at the head of the table, efficient, detached. We're here to finalize the dissolution of the marriage between Carly and David Thornton, married 25 years, one adult child. Miss Thornton is represented by Brian Whitmore. Mr. Thornton by Helen Moss. She opened her folder. Mr. Whitmore, present the proposed terms. Brian slid our documents forward. The marital home, valued at $800,000, transfers entirely to Miss Thornton. The mortgage included an infidelity clause drafted by Miss Thornton's mother. In the event of adultery, full ownership remains with the wronged party. Helen blinked. She hadn't known. Retirement accounts total $1.4 million. $1.2 million remains with Miss Thornton. Mr. Thornton retains his 401, valued at $200,000. The architecture firm, valued at $500,000, remains solely with Miss Thornton. No alimony requested or offered, based on adultery and financial fraud. Helen leaned forward. This settlement is extremely one-sided. Mr. Thornton contributed to this marriage for 25 years. Brian's tone sharpened. Mr. Thornton committed adultery and stole $180,000 from joint accounts. He also concealed the true maternity of their son. He avoided criminal prosecution only because of federal cooperation. David flinched. Dr. Kenwood turned to him. Do you contest the proposed settlement? David finally looked at me. His eyes were hollow. No, I don't contest it. His voice was barely audible. Carly is right about everything. I destroyed our marriage. I lied. I stole. I threw away 25 years because... He let out a brittle laugh. Because of a con artist who never cared about me. Helen touched his arm. David, it's true. I was selfish. I wanted to feel desired, important, and I destroyed what actually mattered. He faced me. I'm sorry, Carly. I know that fixes nothing, but I am sorry. Acknowledged, I said. Brian cleared his throat. One additional matter. The maternity clause? Helen frowned. Maternity clause? Evan is not Miss Thornton's biological son. Mr. Thornton knew from the beginning and chose not to disclose it. Miss Thornton discovered this during divorce proceedings. David began crying quietly. Helen looked between us. Does Evan know? Not yet, I said. And he won't hear it from him. I placed another document on the table, a non-disclosure clause. David is prohibited from telling Evan or anyone else about his true maternity. Violation triggers financial penalties and potential loss of visitation. Helen shifted uneasily. You intend to enforce silence about maternity? I'm protecting my son. He's 20. Senior year of college. His identity doesn't need to collapse right now. He'll learn the truth eventually, on my timeline. David's voice trembled. When? After graduation. When he's ready? Will I be there? I haven't decided. He nodded. I agree. He shouldn't hear it from me. Dr. Kenwood made notes. All terms agreed. Brian and Helen confirmed. Then sign. It took 15 minutes. David's signature shook. Mine did not. The court will process within 72 hours, Dr. Kenwood said. Your divorce will be finalized by week's end. Thank you, I replied. David remained seated. Carly, can we talk? Just a minute, Brian glanced at me. 5 minutes. Everyone stepped outside. We stood on opposite sides of the table. I know I have no right to ask for anything, David began. But you should know something. I waited. I did love you. In the beginning. Maybe even until I got scared of getting older, of becoming invisible, of feeling like the best parts of my life were over. He wiped his eyes. That doesn't excuse what I did. but it's the truth. Patricia made me feel seen again. Young, important. I wanted that feeling so badly. I ignored every warning sign. You traded 25 years for an illusion. I traded it because I was a coward, because real love takes work, and I didn't want to face that. He met my eyes. Real love is built on truth, and I lied from the start. About Evan, about everything. I know, and I'll regret it forever. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just hope you believe I'm sorry, and that being Evan's father, that part was real. I love him. He's my son, I said quietly. Biology doesn't change that. 20 years of raising him is real. You don't get to take that from me. I know, and I'm grateful he has you. Silence filled the room. Will I see you at Thanksgiving? He asked softly. Evan wants us both there. I'll be there. You can come. But we're not a family anymore. We're Evan's parents. He nodded. That's more than I deserve. I turned toward the door. Carly, I paused. For what it's worth, you were a good wife, a good mother. None of this was your fault. I didn't respond. I walked out. Brian met me in the hallway. You okay? I'm done, I said. Finally. He nodded. Now comes the hard part. Evan would be home for Thanksgiving in 3 weeks. I still had to decide when to tell him the truth. We stepped outside. The Seattle sky was gray, rain threatening. I climbed into my car and sat for a moment. 2.5 weeks earlier, I'd watched Patricia Vaughn led away in handcuffs through the hospital where she'd built her reputation. Exposed. Today, I'd signed the papers ending my marriage. In 72 hours, David Thornton would be my ex-husband, and I would be free. Free from lies, free from pretending, free from carrying someone else's deception. I pulled out of the lot and headed home, to the house that was now entirely mine, to a life I hadn't planned but was ready to rebuild. Rain began as I crossed the bridge, steady, cleansing. For the first time in 7 weeks, I could finally breathe. Wednesday afternoon, November 27th, I stood at the kitchen window, watching my son's truck pull into the driveway. Evan stepped out. My son, whatever the DNA test said, he shouldered his duffel bag and walked toward the front door. He looked good, healthy, happy, completely unaware that his world was about to shift. Not yet, I reminded myself. Not today. The front door burst open with his usual energy. Mom! He dropped the bag and pulled me into a hug. God, it's good to be home. I held him tight. It's good to have you home. I meant it. Evan pulled back, looking around. Where's Dad? He's staying somewhere else. You'll see him tomorrow at Thanksgiving dinner. His face fell. So, it really happened. The divorce. The papers were finalized 3 weeks ago. I'm sorry. Evan dropped onto the couch. Damn. I knew it was coming, but it's still weird to hear it out loud. I sat across from him. I know this isn't easy. Was it because of Dad's affair? That woman at the hospital? Partly. There were other factors too. Like what? This was the moment. I could tell him everything. About the DNA, about David's 25-year lie, about Patricia's fraud, all of it. But I looked at Evan, 20 years old, home for the holiday, already processing his parents' divorce, and I realized, not yet, not now. Like the fact that your dad and I wanted different things. Sometimes people grow apart. It's not anyone's fault. It was someone's fault. But this was a kind lie. Evan studied me. Are you okay? I mean, really okay? I'm getting there. The last few months have been rough, but I'm managing. If you need to talk. I know. Thank you. I leaned forward. But right now, I need you to focus on school. Finish strong. Graduate. Don't let our problems become your problems. You're still my mom. Your problems are my problems. I appreciate that. But Evan, I chose my words carefully. I'm your mother, and I love you. Nothing will ever change that. Remember that, no matter what happens, no matter what you might hear later. Evan looked confused by the intensity. I know, Mom. Why are you talking like something else is about to happen? Because life is complicated. And sometimes the truth is messy. But through all of it, one thing stays constant. You're my son, and I love you. Yeah, okay. He accepted it, even if he didn't fully understand. "Oh, there's someone else you should meet." "Who? Your Aunt Victoria?" Evan blinked. "What aunt?" I explained. "Victoria was my half-sister, from our grandmother's affair before I was born. We'd found each other during the divorce. It was a long story. I'd explain it all later." Evan shook his head. "This family gets weirder by the day. You have no idea. Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, an unusual gathering at my house. Present. Carly, Evan, David, silent, barely eating, Victoria, Brian, and Arthur Kingsley." Evan looked around the table. "This is the weirdest Thanksgiving I've ever been to." Brian poured wine. "Weird doesn't mean bad." Victoria asked Evan about his engineering major. They bonded over problem-solving mechanical systems. "Mom didn't tell me much about you," Evan said. "Where did you come from?" Victoria smiled. "Long story. Short version, I'm your mom's half-sister from our grandmother's affair before Carly was born. We didn't know each other existed until recently. Family's complicated. No kidding," Evan noticed Arthur. "How do you know my mom?" Arthur answered carefully. "Through some shared circumstances, your mother helped me resolve some legal issues with my ex-wife. She was incredibly kind, a sanitized version. Evan didn't need to know the Patricia connection. Your mother is a good woman, one of the best I've ever met." Evan smiled. "She's pretty great." I raised my glass. To new beginnings. To truth, even when it's painful. To family. In all its forms. To the fact that we're all still standing. To standing, Brian echoed. To family, Victoria added. Even David quietly raised his glass. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Later that evening, Evan and I stood on the back porch. Seattle rain was falling. "So, you want to tell me what's really going on?" "There's something you're not telling me about, Dad. About the divorce. About why you keep saying you'll always be my mother, like it's being questioned." I faced the moment of truth again. I could tell him now. Should tell him. But I looked at Evan, home for the holiday, needing stability, already dealing with too much, and made the decision. "Not today. You're right. There are things I haven't told you. About your father and me, about decisions made a long time ago. But those things don't change who you are. They don't change what I am to you. When the time is right, when you're ready, I'll tell you everything. I promise." "When will that be?" "After you graduate. After you finish school. After you've had a chance to live your life without this hanging over your head." "Is it that bad?" "It's that complicated. But I need you to trust me. Trust that I'm protecting you, not hiding from you. I do trust you." "Good. Then trust me on this. Finish school, graduate, build your life, and then we'll talk about everything." Evan nodded slowly. "Okay, but Mom, yeah, whatever it is, whatever you're not telling me, it's not going to change anything. You're my mom. That's non-negotiable." I pulled him into a hug. "I love you, son. I love you too." Later that night, after Evan had gone to bed, I stood on the back porch watching the rain fall over Seattle. Victoria joined me with 2 beers. "You decided not to tell him," she said. "It wasn't a question." "Not yet. He's got enough to process. Parents divorced, new aunt. He doesn't need the maternity truth on top of that." "When are you going to tell him?" "After he graduates. In the next 6 months, when he's ready." Victoria nodded. "Wise or cowardly?" "Sometimes they're the same thing." I laughed despite myself. "Thanks for the support. That's what sisters are for," Victoria said. And somehow, standing there with the sister I'd never known I had, protecting the son who wasn't mine biologically but was mine in every way that mattered, I felt more like a mother than I ever had before. The rain fell, steady. The house behind us was warm. My son was home, safe, loved. The truth would come, eventually. But tonight, this moment, this fragile, imperfect, reconstructed family was enough. Victoria raised her beer. To complicated truths. I clinked my bottle against hers. To protecting what matters. We drank in silence. 2 sisters watching the rain, each of us carrying secrets, both of us learning what it meant to be family, Inside, Evan slept in his childhood bedroom, unaware that in 6 months, everything he knew about himself would change. But for tonight, he was just a college kid home for Thanksgiving, and I was just his mother. And that was the only truth that mattered. 3 months after Thanksgiving, on a gray afternoon in late February, I stood with Victoria at our mother's grave, setting down flowers we'd chosen together. "You think she knew?" Victoria asked. "That we'd end up here like this, Mom?" I shook my head. She was too busy running from her mistakes to imagine us making peace with them. Victoria rested her hand on the headstone. "Thanks for being a terrible mother. It brought us together." I laughed softly. "That's one way to look at it. The only way. If she'd been honest, we probably never would have met. So, thanks, I guess." We stood in silence, then walked away, side by side. 5 months had passed since the parking garage video changed everything. The divorce was finalized in November. The house was mine. The business was mine. My life felt like mine again. Victoria had become a steady presence. Weekly dinners, Seahawks games, occasional help reviewing contractors. The sister I never knew existed turned out to be exactly what I needed. Brian and I had grown closer too. He handled the divorce flawlessly. No appeals, no resistance, a complete legal victory. But beyond that, we'd strengthened as siblings through everything we endured. And then there was Arthur. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend hikes in the Cascades. Two people who understood betrayal learning to trust again. We weren't rushing, just building something honest, one careful step at a time. My business was thriving. Word spread about how I handled Patricia with restraint, integrity, and professionalism. Clients respected that. New contracts kept coming. David was living in Redmond now, in a modest one-bedroom apartment. He worked as a medical billing clerk, earning a fraction of his former salary. His career as a hospital administrator was over. He saw Evan occasionally. Their relationship was strained, but not beyond repair. He was in therapy twice a week, trying to rebuild from the wreckage he'd caused. I didn't hate him anymore. I just felt nothing. He made his choices. Now he lived with them. Patricia's trial began in early February. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Arthur, Adam Sutton, Victor Porter, and Henry Shepard, the men she'd deceived. On day 3, David testified under immunity. He described how Patricia seduced him, persuaded him to invest in Summit Healthcare Partners, and promised a future she never intended to give. The defense tried to portray him as complicit, but he held firm. On day 5, Arthur took the stand. Calm, powerful, devastating. He detailed how Patricia stole $400,000 from his inheritance, derailed his career, destroyed his marriage, and silenced him with NDAs. "Did you believe Dr. Vaughn loved you?" the prosecutor asked. "For a long time," Arthur replied, meeting her eyes. "But none of it was real. Patricia Vaughn is a predator. She uses people until they're empty, then discards them." The jury watched her face. They saw what I'd seen all along, the con artist behind the surgeon's mask. Adam testified. Victor testified. Henry testified. An FBI forensic accountant presented spreadsheets proving $2 million stolen over a decade. After 2 weeks, the jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge showed no sympathy. "You abused your position, your education, and your charm," she said. "You targeted vulnerable men and defrauded them systematically. The harm you caused is profound." 18 years in federal prison. Medical license permanently revoked. Assets forfeited. Arthur squeezed my hand as the sentence was read. Victoria nodded beside me. Justice had finally arrived. Evan was finishing his senior year at the University of Washington. He graduated in June with an engineering degree and a job waiting in Portland. He called every week, still called me Mom. Our bond was stronger than ever. He still didn't know about the DNA test. I would tell him after graduation, let him complete college without his identity unraveling. That was my final protection. For now, he was simply my son, and I was simply his mother. One evening, I stood on my back porch with a beer, watching the Seattle skyline glow. 56 years old, starting over. But not from nothing. I had Evan. I had Victoria. I had Arthur. I had Brian. I had a business built with my own hands and a reputation earned honestly. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Hey Mom, just wanted to say thanks for everything, for being honest, for being you. Love you." I smiled and replied, "Love you too, son. Always will." Later that night, Victoria asked, "You forgive her? Our mother?" "Yeah, I do," I said. "Not because she deserves it, because I'm tired of carrying her mistakes." "Me too," she answered. Resentment is heavy. We were done with it. Then Brian called. "Patricia was officially transferred to federal prison today," he said. "It's over." "It's over," I repeated, and it was. I looked around my kitchen, at the photos on the refrigerator, Evan's graduation announcement, Victoria and me at a Seahawks game, a Thanksgiving photo, awkward but real. People say blood is thicker than water. I've learned something different. Blood doesn't make a family. Choice does, presence does, love does. I chose Evan every day for 20 years. That makes me his mother. Victoria chose to stand beside me. That makes her my sister. David chose betrayal. Patricia chose greed. They chose themselves. I chose forgiveness. Not for them, for me. Because carrying hatred is exhausting. I'm 56. I have a son who loves me. A sister I didn't know I needed. A man who understands my scars. A thriving business. A brother who fought for me. Most people spend their lives searching for family. I found mine in a parking garage. Life is strange that way. The family you choose can be stronger than the one you're born into. And the love you build is worth more than the love you're given. I'm Carly Thornton. And I'm finally free. And to you listening to this family story, remember this. Betrayal doesn't just destroy marriages. It shatters identities, rewrites histories, and forces you to question everything you thought was true. But here's what I learned through all of it. First, real revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. Real revenge is about protecting what matters most. Your children, your integrity, your future. I could have burned David's life to the ground. I could have told Evan everything the moment I found out. But true revenge is choosing restraint when rage would be easier. It's choosing your son's well-being over your own wounded pride. Second, this family story taught me that family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by who shows up. Who stands beside you when everything falls apart. Victoria, a stranger 6 months ago, became my sister. Not because we share blood, but because she chose to protect me. That's what family stories are really about. The people who choose you when they don't have to. Third, God puts people in your path for a reason. I'm not a perfect Christian, but I believe Victoria finding me in that parking garage wasn't random. It was providence. When my family story was falling apart, God was already writing a new chapter I couldn't see yet. Here's my advice. Don't be like me. Don't wait 25 years to face the truth. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't let fear of confrontation keep you living in a lie. If something feels wrong in your marriage, in your family, address it. Have the hard conversations early, before they become catastrophic. But if you find yourself where I was, standing in a parking lot watching your life crumble, remember this. You get to choose what comes next. You can choose bitterness, or you can choose building. You can choose revenge, or you can choose peace. I chose peace, and it saved me. If this family story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Have you faced betrayal? Found family in unexpected places? Your story matters. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories about navigating life's hardest moments with integrity. Thank you for following this journey to the end. Your time and attention mean everything. A word of caution. The stories you'll hear on this channel may contain fictionalized elements created for educational and reflective purposes. If the content doesn't suit you, feel free to explore other videos that better match your preferences. We respect your choice. I'm Carly Thornton, and I'm finally free.